Hello and welcome to today's video. My name is Anniken and I design knitting patterns and I teach knitting workshops. In today's video I'm going to show you how to keep the lace pattern correct whilst shaping. So when you're doing decreases, specifically kind of around the armhole or the neckline on a sweater which has an all over lace pattern like this. You can also use this information in this video for other stitch patterns. But lace knitting is a little bit different from some other stitch patterns and I'll talk about that more in a minute. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave a comment below. So I do have another video talking about how to keep the lace pattern correct while you are shaping, so decreasing or increasing. And I will link to that below, but this stitch pattern throws up a very particular problem, so I thought it would be useful to do a separate video on this. So let's have a look at this sweater. Around the armhole, you can see that the lace pattern goes right up to the armhole. So the sweater was knitted in the round to the underarms, and then I knitted the front and back separately to the shoulders. And it is a shaped armhole, so it's a set-in sleeve. I didn't decrease a lot on this because this is the smallest size. The bigger sizes have more decreases here. And then I picked up stitches for the sleeve afterwards and knitted the sleeve from the top down. Let's get started with this tutorial. Now you may notice that there's a little bit of a lack of continuity. I actually filmed this tutorial a few weeks ago. And then when I was editing it earlier today, I realized that there was a little bit of a soft focus look going on. I'm not sure that there was a smudge on my lens or whether it was the light, but I wasn't happy with the tutorial, so I decided to refilm it. Fortunately, I can't film the introduction again because I don't have the sweater here anymore. The sweater was sent off to Knitting Magazine to be photographed and I haven't received it back yet. So I want to go ahead and film this tutorial. So that's why my nails look different and my sweater looks different. So I do apologize for that, but hopefully the video will be better quality, which will be better. Okay, so let's take a look at the original swatch. So this is a swatch that shows the stitch pattern that I used for this design. And this is the chart that I used for this design. So this is the actual chart that appears in the pattern. Lace patterns are made up of increases and decreases, and increases are made up by yarn overs. So yarn over, yarn forward, yarn round the needle, yarn over the needle are basically all the same thing. In the UK, we tend to use the terms yarn forward, yarn over the needle, yarn round the needle, mostly. In the US, they tend to mainly use yarn over. Yarn over is becoming a lot more popular in the UK now. They basically all mean the same thing. It's just a way of taking the yarn over your needle to make a hole, which increases by one stitch. Doesn't really matter what you call it. I call it yarn over. Each yarn over makes an increase. So in order to make sure that you're balancing out your stitch pattern, each time you do a yarn over, you have to also do a decrease. And it's this combination of increases and decreases that makes your lace pattern. Now, depending on the lace pattern that you are using, some lace patterns are fairly easy to shape while you're keeping the lace pattern correct. Other lace patterns are a little bit more difficult. If you don't know how to read a lace chart, I do recommend that you have a go. I will link my tutorial for how to read charts below. Working out how to keep the lace pattern correct while you are shaping is much easier if you know how to use the lace chart. It's not impossible if you can't read the lace chart, but it's certainly a lot easier because you can draw out the visual representation of what the stitch pattern actually looks like on paper or on screen here. I used a charting software for this. You can do this on paper as well. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to show you in a minute what the shaping chart is going to look at, how I've used the chart to actually work out how I'm going to do the shaping. But before that, let's just have a look at this chart. This was the chart that was in the pattern. And as you can see, the pattern is not exactly in two halves, but it is kind of in two sections. So this first section here, we got a decrease here, in column 2. Then we got a few knit stitches, and then we got a couple of purl stitches. We got this purl column that kind of snakes its way up the, not the center of the pattern, but up the middle, not really the middle, snakes its way up the lace pattern. And then on this side we got increases. So we start here with just 1 stitch, and then we gradually increase to 5 stitches, and we start here with 5 stitches, and then we gradually decrease to 1 stitch. So that's what is making the purl stitches move across the stitch pattern like this into this, and creating this undulating lace pattern. Now, if we had increases and decreases in this section and increases and decreases in this section, we could kind of divide the stitch pattern in half. We don't have that on this chart, so we have to take the whole chart as a whole, and it's 10 stitches in that whole chart. So this is the chart that I have drawn out to show how I'm doing the shaping. In the center here is the stitch pattern from the chart I showed you earlier. So that's the stitch pattern, the pattern repeat from the pattern. And then I've added 1 repeat either side of that. So if I was doing this across the width of the garment, I would work till I get to that marker, till I get to the beginning of the pattern repeat, which is this red line here. Then I work that pattern repeat however many times I need to across the row till I get to the last section, which is where my second marker is. I've worked up to row 8, and I'm going to start from row 9. Now let's have a look at the pattern repeat. So I start with a purl 1, then I got an SSK, and then at the end of the pattern repeat I end with a purl 1, and then before that I've got a yarn over. So I've got a decrease here and an increase here. Now if I move that over to this pattern repeat at the side where I'm going to do the shaping, I can fit in that yarn over here, that's no problem. But if I do the SSK at the beginning of the row, or 2 stitches in from the row, I'm going to have problems. The shaping pattern will read knit 2, SSK, working pattern to last 4 stitches, knit 2 together, knit 2. So if I knit the first 2, do an SSK here, and then carry on working, do my yarn over here, then I'm basically doing the same thing that I'm doing in the pattern repeat. And I have done a decrease and a yarn over, so therefore my stitches in this section here before the pattern repeat is the same as it was before. There is no change. So I have 2 options here. I could not do the yarn over, so I could knit 2, SSK, then work the knit and purl stitches, but not do the yarn over, which means that I would be SSK, then I would be knitting 1, 2, 3, 4, purl 2, knit 1, purl 1. Or if I want to do that yarn over there, then I've got to turn that SSK at the beginning into a double decrease. So I'm going to turn that SSK at the beginning into an SSSK. So instead of decreasing 1 stitch, I'm decreasing 2 stitches. I would like to try and keep these yarn over at the beginning going for as long as possible. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, if we look at the end of the row, end of row 9, I have the opposite problem, because I could have fitted in the SSK at the beginning of the pattern repeat. I could fit that in here, but I can't fit in the yarn over at the end. Here I've decided to take out the SSK because I can't fit in the yarn over at the end. And that's the kind of thing you've got to be a bit aware of, because if I decide to do the SSK at the beginning of the end here, the section at the end, and I can't do the yarn over, then I would end up with losing 2 stitches here, because I do the SSK here and then I do knit 2 together before the last 2 stitches. So I've got to watch out for things like that. The yarn over and decrease in the actual pattern repeat has to be looked at as a pair. They belong together. So let's knit the first 2, and then I'm going to SSK. I have a longer video on different left-leaning decreases where I show you how to do SSK in detail, so I'm not going to go through it too slowly at the moment, but I will just show you quickly how to do it. I'm going to do an SSSK, so slip one stitch knitwise, slip the second stitch knitwise, so that would be what I would do for an SSK. Now I'm going to do an SSSK, so I'm going to slip a 3rd stitch knitwise. So slip 3 stitches knitwise, 1 at a time. Then I'm going to put my left needle into the front of all 3 stitches, So if my right needle is at the back, then I'm going to knit all 3 together. I'm knitting continental style, doesn't matter if you knit English style. Then I'm going to knit 3, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to purl 2, knit 1, and then yarn over, and then purl 1. So now I'm at the start of the pattern repeat. I'm going to switch that marker I had on there out for a smaller marker. And then I'm going to just work the pattern repeat as normal. So SSK, it was purl 1, SSK, knit 3, purl 2, knit 1, yarn over, purl 1. Hang on. I'm just doing that bit quickly, otherwise this tutorial will become very, very long. And then I'm switching that marker off for a smaller ring marker. Don't know why I chose a colour that matches the yarn, but never mind. And then I'm going to work until I get to the last 4 stitches. Now remember, I got to take out the SSK at the beginning here of this repeat here, this section, because if I do the SSK here, I will decrease 1 stitch there plus 1 at the end. I have heard some people in the past say that when you are shaping in the lace pattern, the best thing to do is to just see if you can leave out some of the increases or decreases. So rather than work and decrease at the beginning of the row and 1 at the end of the row, you just try and alter this lace pattern basically. So at the beginning I would do the SSK but not the yarn over. Here I would do the SSK and not the yarn over. And that would decrease. It would basically achieve the same thing, but it wouldn't look as neat. I prefer it when I get these kind of shaping lines at the edge of my fabric. Now also notice I'm not doing it right at the edge of the fabric. When I'm saying at beginning and the end, I'm actually doing it 2 stitches in from the edge. So I have 2 free stitches at beginning and at the end, because if you're going to sew up the garment or pick up stitches, which on this garment, when you shape the armhole, you're actually going to pick up stitches around the armhole afterwards. And it's much easier to pick up stitches or sew up a garment if you have 2 stitches along the edge. Gives you a clear channel between the first and the second stitch in which you can pick up or sew up. That's one of the tricks that I share in my finishing techniques class. Okay, so I'm not going to do this SSK here. I should have done an SSK after the purl one, but I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to knit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Purl 1, 2. Now I've got 4 stitches left, so I'm going to do knit 2 together for the decrease and then knit the last 2 stitches. I'm using a row counter here just to keep track of what I'm doing, and I'm on row 9. There we go. Because when I filmed this the first time around, I kept losing track of which row I was on. Okay, so I'm going to decrease on the wrong side row as well. So purl 2, and because I did a knit 2 together on the right side row, I'm going to do a purl 2 together on the wrong side row. So I just go into the 2 stitches. So depending on how you purl in with yarn at the front or the back, I purl at the back because I do Norwegian purl. And then I'm going to just work in pattern to the end. So I'm just going to follow the knit and purl stitches I have on my left hand needle. So like now the next stitch on my left hand needle is a knit stitch, so I'm going to knit it. That's a knit stitch. Then I got some purl stitches, then I got 2 knit stitches, some purl stitches. So you can count a chart, but I find it easier just to see what comes next on my needle, and then I just knit or purl them as they appear. I'm going to work till I get to the last 4 stitches, and then because on that side I did an SSK, now the wrong side version of an SSK is either an SSP, or some people would do a purl 2 together through the back loop. I used to always do a purl 2 together through the back loop, but these days I tend to do an SSP because it looks neater. I'm going to do it continental style. Now I actually purl with the yarn at the back, which is a little bit tricky when you're doing an SSP, but it doesn't, the beginning is still the same. So the next 2 rows I'll do this English style. So slip on stitch knitwise, slip the next stitch knitwise, and then you're going to put those 2 stitches back on the left hand needle without untwisting them again, because you've now twisted them onto the right hand needle. So you want to put them back on your left hand needle but without twisting them. So just put your left needle in so your stitches are tip to tip like that, and then take your right needle out. Now, depending on how you purl, I purl Norwegian style, so I'll show you that first. If you purl Norwegian style, you have to take the yarn between the needle into the stitch purlwise through the back loop, which is a little bit tricky. Let me take the yarn at the front so it's out the other way. When you're going into the stitches from the back, so if you went through the stitches knitwise, you would just go in like that. But because we're purling, we've got to come with the needle the other way. So you end up pointing the needles in the same direction. If I was going to knit them, I would put my needle in like that. Because I'm purling, I'm putting my needle into the back like that. And then I'm going to purl. So if I'm doing it Norwegian style, Norwegian purl, I would go behind the working yarn into the 2 stitches purlwise, purl them together, and then off. If I'm doing it regular continental style, I would go in like that and then purl it, and I will show you English style on the next wrong side row. So we are now on row 11. So if I look at row 11, I've still got that yarn over here, which means that SSK at the beginning here, I've still got to turn that into an SSSK. So let's do that. Oops, and I've just pulled my needle out. Let's slide the needle back in. Hang on. There we go. So let me just knit those. So I've knitted the first 2, and then I'm going to do an SSSK. So slip on knitwise, slip on knitwise, slip a 3rd one knitwise, left needle into the front of all those 3 stitches. And if you're doing it English style, you just knit it English style. Oops, I didn't get the, there we go. I didn't get the needle through all of those 3 stitches. And then I've run out of knit stitches now, so I'm going to purl 1, 2, and then I'm going to knit 1, yarn over, knit 1, purl 1, and then I'm going to do the pattern repeat as normal. So I'm just going to do that very quickly. Oh no, I knitted that last one, I should have purled it. There we go. So now I'm at the section after the pattern repeat, and I'm on row 11. So that means I'm here. So I'm going to purl 1, then I'm going to knit 1, 2, 3, 4, because I don't want to do that decrease at the beginning here, because I can't do the yarn over at the end. So that would mess things up a little bit. So I'm going to knit 1, 2, 3, 4. No, hang on. Okay, so what I decided to do here, what I've done on the chart is I've done that last stitch before the decrease as a purl 1. I don't really need to do that. It looks like a knit stitch on my needles. I'm actually going to knit it, even though it actually says purl on my chart. Knit 2 together, knit 2. So you can see over here, I'm actually continuing the lace pattern. On here, I'm not able to continue the lace pattern. Okay, let's do the wrong side rows. I'm going to purl 2 together. Let's do that English style. The yarn to the front, needle into the 2 stitches, purl them together. I'm not very good at knitting English style. There we go. So I'm going to go back to knitting the rest of this continental style. Again, we just purl the purl stitches, knit the knit stitches. By the way, if you are interested in learning continental knitting, I do have a course. So I dropped that yarn over. Okay, so I dropped that yarn over by accident and knocked it off. Then I picked it up very quickly. But if you knock off your yarn before you worked it, all you need to do is pick up that top strand that goes from the stitch you just knitted to the one you're going to knit next. Put that back on my left hand needle, and that's my yarn over. I do have continental knitting. I teach it in yarn shops, and I also have it as an online course. At the time of filming this, I'm not due to teach it anywhere. I will link below to my online continental knitting course, where I show you how to knit continental style purl, Norwegian style and regular continental style, plus a few other things, including how to knit lace patterns and cables and things while you're knitting continental style. If you're interested in an in-person workshop, then sign up to my newsletter, because then you'll find out when I'm teaching that workshop next. So I'm going to work till I get to the last 4 stitches and knit one more. Okay, so let's do the SSP English style this time. I'm going to take my yarn to the front, slip one stitch knitwise, slip next stitch knitwise, put my left needle in from the left. So I'm slipping those 2 stitches back. If it was SSK, remember, I would knit it from here. I can't do that here because my yarn's at the front. I would end up with a yarn over in front of it, and that wouldn't be a good idea. So I've slipped them back to the left hand needle. Then I'm going to put my needle in through the back loop purlwise, which means it's actually, I've got to kind of twist it around. Instead of going in like that, I've got to kind of twist it around. And then I'm going to purl those 2 together. There we go. And then I'm going to purl the last 2 stitches. As you can see, I'm not very good at purling or knitting English style. Okay, that was row 12. Okay, so let's do row 13 as well. So again in row 13, same as I did in row 9 and 11, I've got to knit 2, then I've got to do an SSK. So I'm going to do this a little bit quicker because I want to show you what happens on row 15. So SSK, and then I'm straight into the yarn over. Then I'm going to knit 2, purl 1, and then I'm just going to do the pattern repeat really quickly. If you notice, if you spot it, when I do the SSK and the pattern repeat, I'm actually doing an alternative version of the SSK, not the standard version. I'm not going to show you that now, but I do show you how to do it in a separate video, which is called SSK and left leaning, SSK and variations, or SSK and left leaning decreases, or something like that. I will link it below, and I'll also try and link it at the end of this video. Okay, so I'm going to work till I get to the last 4 stitches. So I'm going to knit 2 more, knit 2 together, knit 2. Okay, so you can see here, I'm going to hold it up so you can see it a bit better. So you can see here that it definitely goes in like that. And you can see that it keeps this lace pattern going right to the edge. You can see we've got these 3 yarn overs here that we had on the chart here. Oops, you can't see that. So we got these 3 yarn overs on the chart here, there, here. Obviously this doesn't look as good because I haven't blocked it, which is why I'm just trying to stretch it a bit. But you can see the lace pattern. That's the shaping line from my decreases, from my armhole shaping, and it blends in quite nicely with the stitch pattern. And you can see the stitch pattern goes right up to the edge here, except for that decrease and the 2 stitches on the edge here. On this side, you can see it's a little bit different. This is this section on the pattern repeat in the middle that I did as normal. So you can see there is a bit of a sort of section of stocking stitch here above these yarn overs here, but it's not that big. On this side, it is a little bit bigger. So if I compare the 2 here and here, you can see on this side, it is, that stocking stitch section is a little bit bigger, a little bit more obvious than it is in the actual stitch pattern, but that's just the way it had to be. And you can see you've got a clear decrease line at the edge here, and then you've got 2 stitches between the decrease line and the edge. So again, you can see clearly slopes in towards the center. This is the smallest size. So I got 2 purl stitches here, and when I got to here, when I finished all my decreases, I found that if I wanted to continue the lace pattern up along the edge here, I had to make this purl column here, which was 2 stitches down here. Can you see up here it narrows a bit? So up here I actually made that purl column just 1 stitch because it meant that I could carry on with the lace pattern. If I'd kept this purl column 2 stitches, I wouldn't have had enough stitches between those purl stitches and the edge to actually do the lace pattern. And this bit here would have just been knit stitches, which would have looked a bit more obvious because there would have been like a solid column of knit stitches going up the side here. So by making this purl column here, which should have been 2 stitches, by making it 1 stitch, so you can see it goes 2 stitches here and then down to 1. I don't know whether you can see how it narrows. You can see, hang on, where is it? Here is wider, and then it goes narrower here. That meant that I could continue this lace pattern right up to the edge. So that might not work for all sizes. Basically, you just have to make a judgment call on your knitting, see what it looks like. If you try and incorporate the lace pattern, sometimes when you try and incorporate the lace pattern, if you can't do the whole repeat, sometimes it can look a little bit messy. So you just have to make a decision and decide whether you think it's going to work or not. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But basically, you just have to make that judgment. Which I know can be difficult sometimes, but you just have to look and see. So what I would recommend is that you keep an eye on your knitting as you're decreasing, and if you don't like how it looks, then rip it back. So if you're worried about unpicking stitches and making a mess of it, then I do recommend that you put a lifeline in before you start shaping for the armhole. Same thing goes when it comes to shaping for the neckline, by the way. Put a lifeline in. And then if you make a mistake or you don't like how it looks, you can just rip back to the lifeline and then try again. Try something different. You're only talking a few rows before you'll know whether it works or not. So if you need to try it twice, 3 times, that's fine. It's better to do it more times and be happy with it than just do it once and never like it. But a lifeline is just a piece of yarn through your stitches while the stitches are on your needle. Then you carry on knitting, and then your stitches will just be sitting on your lifeline. And if you make a mistake, you can pull your needles out, rip back to the lifeline, and they will sit on that lifeline. Then you can slip them back on your knitting needle. If you are happy with what it looks like, you can just pull your lifeline out. So I will link to my lifeline tutorial below. This yarn, by the way, is from Lottie Knits. It's her little bird sock, and it's absolutely gorgeous. It is a sock yarn, but you can use it for sweaters as well. And I really enjoyed knitting with it. The colorway is Peony. I will also, by the time this tutorial goes live, I will also have released a yarn review of this yarn, where I also talk more about this design and show you what this design looks like on the dress form. So I will link to that below as well. This pattern is in Knitting Magazine issue 232. I'm actually filming this before I send this sample off to the magazine, so it's a few months before the pattern is published. It's Knitting Magazine 232, and I will link to that below as well. Have any questions, please leave them below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please consider subscribing. I really appreciate your support, and I hope you have a good week, and I will see you next time. Thank you for watching.